Yes, absolutely. Hey, listen, there's nothing better
I
than
went
to
to DC over the weekend. Had a great time.
It's not like honey.
When did you get tea? Denise, can I get your water?
Sure.
Denise, would you like water?
To write on.
Yeah, because you know
skip our core commitments for the moment because after the agenda prep, we're going to move into a discussion specifically about the core commitments. So otherwise, I'm going to call a roll. We are missing Trustee Kane, but otherwise all present. And we do have a quorum. Please stand with me and say the Pledge of Allegiance to the American and the Texas flags. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, indivisible.
Indivisible.
That was miserable. Okay, sorry. It's hot.
It's just caught on film.
We'll take a second try at it again.
There's Jessica.
Here's Trustee Kane is joining us. It is 6:03 by the clock now. Dr. Cardona is attending tonight's San Marcos City Council meeting on behalf of the San Marcos CISD Board of Trustees, and so Dr. Sanders is going to be joining us. Right now, we will have a public forum, but I do not have anybody signed up to speak at said public forum. So we'll just move straight into the agenda preparation for the regular January. It is really hot, sorry guys. September 18th regular scheduled meeting. A copy of which should be in your packet. Dr. Sanders.
Okay, so for the regular scheduled board meeting on September 18th, I'll start with agenda item VIII, Superintendent's Report. We'll have student recognition. We'll have agenda item 6 for reports, information item, Board of Trustees, letter A, redistricting committee update. Item B, or letter B, we'll have the academics report. We'll have the mental health update from Ms. Jenny Parker. We'll have the academics priorities update, which will consist of information to the school board regarding the A through F accountability systems, the updates that have been made that at this time we are aware of. I do not believe the state has finalized the manual at this point, so we'll bring the information that we have at this moment as far as how it'll be set up. C, finance, certified appraisals update, defeasance update. That'll be Mike and Denise. Then we have many items under our consent agenda. Would you like for me to go through all of those, or?
First of all, does anybody have questions on A, B, or C?
I do have a question. Will the mental health update be from communities and schools?
No, it'll be from Miss Jenny Parker, who is she works with the district.
Okay.
So she's a district employee. She's not with community schools.
Okay.
But she'll be giving an update on what we put into place as a district to support mental health. So it's part of an overall plan that does include the work we're doing with communities and schools. So it'll be a holistic approach to all the services that we're providing students in the district.
The proclamation for mental health?
Yes, and the proclamation, given that this is Mental Health Awareness Month.
Okay, I did have a question about the academic priorities update. When we had the workshop last week, we had talked about using the upcoming academic report sessions to do a deep dive into the areas of focus, literacy, math, and early. Did we say early was the third one? Sorry, I'm blanking on it. But I thought we were talking about doing the literacy update first. And so I'm just wondering if it makes more sense to go ahead, I don't know if there's enough time for y'all to put that together, but to go into those numbers with more depth at this meeting rather than go over the A through F update since it's not even final yet.
So the reason why we put the update on here for the A through F is because next month, well, actually this month that we're in, we will actually get the official, and we wanted to give the board an opportunity to understand what you would be seeing later this month. And we don't have any reading data at this point to share. So that was the rationale behind putting.
I mean, we have the scores from this year.
We have the scores, yes.
Yeah. I think what I'm interested in, my colleagues feel free to chime in, but what I'm interested in seeing in terms of the data reports between now and whenever it is in January that we get the taper, right? I'd like to segment them into, like, let's do one report on our reading scores, and I want that to be comprehensive. Like, I want to look at what it looks like in third grade all the way up to English 1 and English 2, and the ACT, SAT scores. Like, I want to see how our kids, how we're getting them, like, where, if we've got their kindergarten numbers even. I know sometimes we're doing assessments on them, how kinder ready are they, right? Let's look and see that the whole system, are the kids, where are they at when they come to us, and then where are we moving them to at various points, and where are we exiting them at along the scale? And with the idea of, figuring out where are things going really well, right? Because I know that there are places where things are working really well, but also there are places, obviously, in the system that we can do better. But I think that also would give everybody an opportunity to sort of get familiar with the data that we collect, what it looks like, and then to, as we were talking about at the workshop, understand sort of what questions can be asked and what actions could or couldn't be taken to affect that. That was sort of what I was envisioning when we talked about it. Is that what y'all?
Yeah, and I think the idea that we discussed was to have literacy focused 1 month and then math another month,
subject,
so that they would be
one academic
separated,
Yeah.
and we would focus on those kinds of things. Is that doable for the September month?
We'll make it happen.
Thank you, sir.
I think I understand we just talked about this, but I do think we need to have an update on what is happening with the A through F system, because that's really important. So I think if you guys go back this week and look at it and feel like you really need to wait till October, then we could do it in October, November. I'd be comfortable with that. I think that still gives us plenty of time, but because I want us to do it right, and I want us to be comprehensive and thorough, and I want to make sure that all of the trustees have a chance to really understand what it is we're looking at when these numbers come up.
And
Yeah,
that
so
way
if
we
we-
can also get the report ahead of time versus trying to do it in the 2 weeks and before the next meeting.
Yep.
So I recommend we have them report in October. maybe.
Okay,
I think that's fair too, yeah.
okay,
Sounds good.
It's too short notice
that's good. All right, thank you. Any other questions about those items?
from the comprehensive.
The consent agenda items, why don't you go ahead and, since it's long, just go through them quickly, and we'll see if we have questions.
Go through them.
Yeah, please. No.
All right, letter A, approval of minutes for regular scheduled board meeting on August 21st, 2023, and special board meeting on September 5th, 2023. B, consider approval of resolution regarding extracurricular status of 4-H organization and approval of adjunct faculty. C, TASB policy update 121. D, approval of contracts with professional services. E, consider adoption of the prevailing wage rates in connection with the construction projects authorized by the board. F, approval of award to an additional professional services firm that provided qualifications and was ranked in response to the request for qualifications of RFQ MD 2324-01 regarding geotechnical engineering services. G, approval of amendment to the contract of Perkins & Will providing design and construction administration services for the 2023 Bond Elementary Schools renovation, Hernandez Elementary School, Travis Elementary School, and transportation project. H, approval of amendment to the contract with Perkins & Will providing for design and construction administration services for the 2023 Bond Marquee Pre-K, Bonham, I guess it should be Bonham Pre-K, Bowie Elementary School, Crockett Elementary School, Lamar, Hernandez Elementary School, Travis Elementary School, Goodnight Middle School, Miller Middle School. I, approval of amendment to the contract with Perkins & Will providing for design and construction administration services for 2023 Bond Middle School's renovation, Goodnight Middle School, and Miller Middle School project.
I think the rest of them are all just additional approvals for contracted services for the bonds until we get to the budget. Yes? So F through Q are bond services. Can you explain the prevailing wage rates in connection with the construction projects, what that means?
So this is in regard to all the construction projects that will come with the bond. The district has to set a fair and adequate wage What we will bring forward is the prevailing wage through the Davis-Bacon Act, and that'll certify the wage that then will contract with contractors and subcontractors, and that's what they would be paid.
Okay. Other questions on any of the consent items? Dr. Salmi?
What additional professional services are we contracting for in this particular case? For item D?
So that
Or is that general for all?
right, so that ties back to the RFQ, the
Okay.
request for qualifications.
Okay.
What we did was we put out an RFQ to obtain services from different engineering service companies who do geotech, do MEP, things like that, that will have that pool of go-to entities that can follow up on our construction work. We did that now early so that way we can procure them correctly, meet procurement standards, and then also keep on our tight timeline of getting the work checked and getting it completed on a timely manner.
Okay, thank you.
All right. And then the items for action, I think those are all pretty self-describing, yes? So we're going to nominate candidates to the Board of Directors for the Caldwell, Guadalupe, and Hayes County Appraisal Districts. And then we talked about having a discussion and possible action to identify the district goals. And so that conversation, when I talked to Dr. Cardona, would really stem out of the conversation that we have tonight after we review the core commitments and see that we are in line with those, or if we're going to make changes, adjustments, and then discuss that district goals with him and with other members of the cabinet. Finance, Dr. Sanders, Ms. Garcia. Yes, please.
Okay. So if you recall, prior to this year, we would bring forward our tax rates in August. Last year, it posed some challenges. If you recall, there were so many protests that our appraisal districts had a difficult time setting certified values. We moved that to September without even realizing the blessing, right? With Senate Bill 2 coming in the second legislative special session, has caused even more confusion, even more backlog in the CADs. So we're still meeting our laws and our rules that will have tax value certified by our school board by the end of September, but that's what you see here. We'll bring forth the consideration acceptance of the certified appraisal rolls from our CADs. We'll also have this is new, but with the laws changing, the district will authorize, I skipped ahead, sorry. With the new changes in SB 2 and the changes within the CADs and the values that are coming, and also going back into our bond that was voted in on May 6th, we presented the INS rate at 3113, which was voted on. The comptroller certification of the comptroller document does not take into account 65 and older withholdings from those property values. So what is possibly going to happen is that we may have to have a defeasance of up to about 800,000, but our assumption, working with bond counsel and our reps from Moat Casey and Robert T. Arena, is that there's likelihood that we won't do the defeasance. This is the safety net. This is going to give us the opportunity to complete our documentation with the comptrollers and not fall within any kind of fault of not having a defeasance if we were to collect a little bit more. So, 3 is a resolution to designate an officer or an employee to calculate the revenue. Again, this is something new. It'll be Ms. Garcia would be the designee to be able to finalize our no new revenue rate and our voter approval rate. Acceptance of that rate is item 4, and then 5 is a consideration in the ordinance setting our 23 tax rate.
So item, sorry.
Go ahead.
So item C2, this is something that we're going to vote on in the case that we need to initiate a defeasance for those individuals who are now eligible for a reduced tax rate due to House Bill 2. Is that
Not
correct
specifically
understanding?
for those, no, ma'am.
For
I'm
any
sorry
reason.
if I missed.
Okay.
Yeah. It would cause, because of that, because of how the CAD is calculating and reporting and how we have to report on the comptroller document. The comptroller document is really not a very fair document for districts. What happens is where we fall in. If you set that INS rate, and you do see a little bit of a higher collection because of the faultiness of that document, we would need to have a defeasance resolution in case we fall into that situation. If we didn't, then we would find ourselves in fault with the comptroller, and they would question why we didn't do that defeasance.
So if there is no defeasance necessary, then this doesn't
Correct.
take
What
any
you'll see in
effect.
that resolution, they'll have language in basically what you just said. We have the ability to have a defeasance up to this point, but if we don't have to, we won't do a cash defeasance.
And there will be a monetary value listed for the defeasance up to?
Correct. Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
And at what point will we know whether or not we have to do the defeasance?
Here pretty quickly. I would say within, we're still getting CAD data back. We have to turn in that comptroller document. I would say within a matter of a few months, we would know if we need to move on the
Okay.
defeasance or not.
Other questions?
I think that.
All right, then we'll do a closed session regarding technology, including cybersecurity plan, and reconvene an open session to take action if needed on said closed session. Are there any other items that people would like to add to this agenda? Any other questions for staff regarding the agenda? Great. All right, thank you very much. We do have in the packet this bond information. So we're now going to get a finance update. Sorry, I was skipping ahead, which I'm assuming is going to talk about the bond.
Correct. It's labeled finance update, but it's really an update on where we're at in the bond. Mr. Sandoval did put this together, but unfortunately he's at a different event this evening. He's at the city council. So he asked for me to step in. I've been working with him, Ms. Garcia and others as we formulate all of our RFQs and all of our purchasing, and that kind of ties into what you'll see tonight. We wanted to give the board an update and show you where we're at right now with the 23 bond, and then kind of where we're going, if you will. So some things that have been completed, as you can see, the work has begun. We've grouped projects, we've assigned budgets, we've made that architect selection, we've had initial meetings. In fact, we had some meetings today to come up with the overall design of where we want to take our learning environments through this process. The construction delivery method has been determined. We have completed the stadium turf, and the practice turf is in progress. We have ordered buses. Some of the technology items are scheduled in that process as well. And then the professional engineers are being selected. That kind of speaks to the consent agenda items that we just saw. A lot of that is living within that slide, if you will. Some opportunities, if you recall, if you look at the turf project, the allocation originally was $2.7 million, but there was a cost savings for all those projects. You can see the cost for those. It came in at a little over 1.9. So we're able to utilize those funds for additional needs within San Marcos High School, and you can see those looking at the field backstop netting for our softball and baseball fields, same with batting cages, track resurfacing, tennis court resurfacing, and weight room floor replacing. What's next on the horizon? You can see September board meeting. Again, a lot of the things that we just looked at, we'll finalize those contracts with professional engineers We had to make those amendments because we had to tie timelines into those contracts. We want to approve that prevailing wage so we can get that information out to our contracts, out into our architects and our design firms to get the ball rolling, so to speak. The amendment to the architect contracts, which include the timelines, like I just said. We're also developing subcommittees on various projects, and that work is going to continue. Also in September, we look to release an RFP for construction manager at risk to help with the overall magnitude of the variety of bond projects that we're working through. And then by the November board meeting, be able to come back with a selection of that construction manager for board approval. You can see here a construction manager evaluation in that RFP that I just mentioned will be outlined as such. We'll look at general firm information, the experience and reputation, the technical competence, proposed personnel. We'll also look at the estimate and cost control measures, and then the price as well. Those points are the evaluation criterion weights of each of those factors. And then also we wanted to present to you kind of a quick glance, if you will, of where we're at in terms of the projects, the project name. The CDM is construction delivery method. And if there's an architect required, or if there was not a need for an architect, and then the estimated budget for each project.
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
I have a question. This person that you're doing an RFP, is this someone that's gonna help, Mr. Sandoval?
Correct, yes, ma'am.
So it's an addition?
It would be
Coming out of the bond money?
coming out of the bond money, correct.
So this is a contract with an individual or?
It'd be with a firm.
With a firm.
Right, it would be a firm. I'm sure there'd be an individual from the firm, but yeah, it would be a.
Have we done that? Have we used this kind of service in the past for our other bond projects?
Personally, I don't know if we ever have
Okay.
with San Marcos. I know this is not an uncommon strategy that other school districts utilize. I would say when Mr. Sandoval was brought on, he was brought on under that construction management piece in addition to purchasing. So it was similar. We used bond funds for that position, if you will, when we were when we were essentially finishing up that 2017 bond. That's roughly the time that he came in to finish that out.
So when the bond projects are all complete, this person's job would be done away with?
The funding stream, yes, would be ending.
So I had talked to Mr. Sandoval about including this update in this meeting, both because I want to make sure that we're keeping our regular meetings streamlined and not 5 hours long, and trying to focus as much on the academic discussions that we have been talking about in those meetings. And I asked him that going forward that we try to do bond presentations in the regular meetings when he needs to bring in an architectural firm, or when he needs to bring in a construction firm to give us an update, or if there's something really pertinent that we need to pay attention to at that point. Otherwise, to try to include general bond updates in this portion of the meeting agenda, if that makes sense to everybody. And if there are other issues coming up, we can certainly add them back onto the agenda or bring them to staff. But could we make sure that we put this presentation up on the website so that it is accessible to the public? Because I don't want to, by moving it from the regular meeting to the agenda prep meeting, make it appear less transparent what we're doing. So,
Absolutely.
okay.
A question.
Yeah.
About the natatorium. That's the last one on the list, and where is that going to be, and what is the progress on
The
that?
location, I'm not 100% sure. I think that's part of the design process,
Oh,
if you
okay.
will. We do have, like it shows, we do have Stantec as the architect who will design, and location is part of the design. And
But we're still planning for it to be out here. I mean, we're not moving.
I believe so.
Yeah.
It would be on the high school footprint is from what I've been told, so.
Can you tell us what the different construction delivery method abbreviations mean?
Man.
Or do you not know? It's
do.
okay.
So CSPs, the CMAR is a construction manager at risk.
Okay.
That would be the construction manager, right, that we just talked about. The CSP is what we've done in terms of reaching out to get like Perkins and Will and other architects who are working with those. Depending, and it's a strategy. Certain projects, a district would want to have a little bit more control over because of cost savings, and then some of them would a district would want to maneuver through like CMAR because there are, again, cost savings, and the delivery of the construction of the project suits itself to those. So.
Thank you.
Other questions? Great. Thank you, Mr. Doyle. Thank you, Ms. Garcia.
Thank you.
All right, and now we are going to do the academic visioning workshop. And I think what we had talked about in this portion of the meeting is really just looking back at the core commitments, since these are now at least, I think, 5 years old, and revisiting them and thinking about whether or not there are items here that we want to edit, to remove, to add to. I think, when we'd spoken as a group, we talked about not developing a list of 19 core commitments, right? Because it sort of then loses the point of them being core. So I don't know that we want to add more than maybe one item. I could see 6 potentially, but I don't think going beyond that, they start to become, I think, meaningless when you just have a whole list of ideas. So I can start by just reading them out, and then if people want to contribute comments, thoughts, ideas, if we all feel this is still where our vested interest lies. SMCISD core commitments. SMCISD is committed to all students performing at or above grade level. SMCISD is committed to establishing a rigorous academic culture where all students graduate college and career ready. SMCISD is committed to creating a culture of high expectations for performance and professionalism. SMCISD is committed to eliminating achievement gaps within student populations. And SMCISD is committed to meaningful reciprocal partnerships and opportunities which serve students, families, and the San Marcos community. And I think in terms of the process of when we put these together, we were trying to tie them to the expectations for us from TEA. And we had done A through D originally, and then I believe we went back and added E when we got the final CCMR requirement, I think, through the TEA.
We need to add something on community.
Yeah.
But we started off with A through D,
Yes.
and then the other was an afterthought.
And then we've used these subsequently to tie them to the goals for the campuses, for the superintendent's goals and objectives. His review directly derives from each of these key components, which then are intended to tie back to the ways that the state is measuring our academic progress and achievement. So that's sort of the background with them. I think we could draw those pictures, but I'm not sure that's really necessary. I think that it sort of speaks for itself how those connect. I don't think that the state requirements of us have significantly changed, or if they are changing, we're not yet aware of how they're going to look. But
Sure.
Ideas.
I think if we 5 years ago decided to establish a rigorous academic culture, if we have not yet done so, then that word establish suggests to me something that we are not yet doing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think we need to evaluate that. If 5 years ago we said we were going to establish this, have we at this point established a rigorous academic culture where all students graduate college and career ready? And if we haven't, then what do we need to address that as a core commitment? If we're constantly establishing something.
So are you saying we should combine some, or are you talking about
I
eliminating?
think we should talk about all students graduating college and career ready. I'm just not sure we should every year, every meeting be in the process of establishing that culture. I think we should have that culture.
I agree. I think we could say SMCISD is committed to a rigorous academic culture.
I think that, I prefer
Yeah.
that language.
So delete establishing and
So
leave it.
SMCISD is committed to a rigorous, committed to a rigorous culture, academic culture, yeah.
Do we want to add somewhere in there something about a graduation rate?
So it reads, where all students graduate college and career ready.
Which is different from all students graduating.
Yes,
I was
it
going to
is.
say
I
something
mean-
not necessarily just about the graduating piece, but we've talked about losing students along the way.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I'm
Just in
I'm
general.
talking about is,
Yeah.
how do we keep from,
I wonder if that's I don't know if this is quite the right way to put it, but in D, eliminating attendance and achievement gaps might get close to what we're thinking about.
Say again?
In D, SMCISD is committed to eliminating attendance and achievement gaps, because if they're here, it's easier to help them get to the point of graduating and achieving any of these things.
Yeah, I think that the attendance is pertinent, certainly. I guess I would read B as saying that we are committed to all students graduating, and we want them to graduate college and career ready. And I think I think we definitely need to improve the graduation rate, right? We're not achieving this in the way that we want, even though we're committed to it, right? We're not achieving it in the way that I think we all want to. I wonder if we need to look at the graduation rate as being part of the 5-year strategic plan that we've been talking about, right? Because I think the idea is that we have the core commitments, and then the mission and visioning statement comes out of that and directs the 5-year plan. Does that make sense to you, Dr. Sanders, in terms of what you guys have been working on with the Holter Center?
It does, and that's something that we're actually in the process of starting this month with the surveys that will be going out to the community for the strategic plan. So once that comes back, we'll know what the community thinks are the most important things that they want to see us emphasize in the school system. So that's going to be going out the last week of this month in preparation for the overall strategic planning process. So it's what you all are saying.
Right.
Yes.
so in this, just to, because I've never done core commitments before in a strategic plan. So do you build the core commitments and then do the strategic plan from the core commitments, or? So where, is that how it normally works, is you develop the core commitments and then, then build the strategic plan? Or do you build the strategic plan and then base the core commitments out of those key things in the strategic plan that you want to accomplish? Just a question, because
Yeah.
I don't know, I've never done
Right.
core commitments, so.
Commitments are to me like your general goals. These are our goals for our district. And then when you have your plan, that's more specific in terms of what do we want for a graduation rate? What do we want for attendance rate? Then you build specifics under your core commitments. These are just, in general, what do we want for our school district?
So the strategic plan is what we're getting to the end of in 2024, and we'll need an addition, so we'll need to expand after 2024. And is that where you're suggesting we would include specifics about graduation rates then, is in the
Well-
strategic plan?
I'm actually just trying to,
Yeah.
I'm unclear of the,
Understood.
because I did some research on this, and what a lot of people are recommending is that you get community involvement, which obviously Dr. Sanders is doing with the strategic plan. And so they should all, in my mind, they should all tie together. And so if we get community involvement, and I'm assuming you're also, when working with the strategic plan, you're gonna look at teachers and administrators to have input on that also. So if we go through and do these, and let's say the community and the teachers and the administration have come up with a different objectives in the strategic plan, now maybe we're not in alignment. So I'm just trying to figure out what the steps are. How do you go about do this? Do you develop the strategic plan, then develop your core commitments, which I think are probably similar to what would be your core objectives in a strategic plan?
These were done in 2016. We hired a consultant, and she came in and sat with us in a workshop situation, and we all talked about what was important for this school district. And that's how we kind of beat out the first four. Then later we added the community plan. But in terms of the top four that we worked on, it had a lot to do with our statistics. How are we doing? How are our achievement between student populations? That was a real important one to one of the board members that kept saying, we don't have the equality in all students in terms of achievement gaps. And so that one was number one, because it was a big, important thing that we wanted to close those gaps. If you remember, Margie?
Yeah, so what I'm wondering is how this ties into the strategic plan.
Also, I think what you're addressing is E, where we want to have meaningful reciprocal partnerships and opportunities, which includes the San Marcos community. So if you want to change that one to something else that you're trying to.
I'm just trying to understand the process.
I would suggest that these seem like goals, that these seem like the guiding force
general
for the
goals.
strategic plan. And that if we agree to these being the commitments, the strategic plan should be designed to meet these as
from the
goals.
goals, yeah.
So that these would be, it seems to me that these would be those things that we are going to have a strategic plan to accomplish. And so we come to consensus that these are the things that we agree are the guideposts for our strategic plan to get there.
And they have to be measurable. And so when you decide that these are your core commitments, you have to think about the test results that we get so that we can evaluate ourselves in terms of, did we reach them? What is our graduation rate right now?
I think we have a comment.
Ms. Munoz?
I know when we're just going through the process with Dr. Sanders, I think, if I'm right, it's like a needs assessment, right? And we would go through the community involvement, and we would look at what are areas that our community wants to focus on, and they would give us a needs assessment on different areas that we can report back to you all. So you all have your goals, our needs assessment is gonna come in with strategic planning, and then they kind of get another look at to make sure that our strategic plan and our goals align.
Okay.
Mr. Sanders, am I right with that?
All right, yeah, and the way that I think of it, and this may not be the best way of describing it, but when I think of the core commitments, I think of the aspirational of where we want to see the district ultimately be. But in order to get there, we have to take those aspirational parts and drill it down to the strategic plan, which will have the identified objectives, the strategies for how we're going to get there. And so that's where you would see if one of our goals is to improve the graduation rate, then we've got to have what strategies are we going to have in place to address increasing the graduation rate. So it might be a freshman indicator so that we start day one when kids enter the high school, we have a freshman plan in place. So you wouldn't see that with the core commitments, but it would be embedded because it's the aspirational part that we're going to take to the strategic planning process.
I think the way that I've been envisioning it is that TA says these are what you need to do in terms of this is the curriculum that you have to include, and these are the TEKS that you have to teach to, and these are the levels that you have to hit with your standardized testing and all of your other things in order to achieve these grades, right? And so we looked at that, and then we said, well, what are the things that are important to us as a community, as a district, as a board, in terms, and then develop these 5 things in response to that from TA, right? And so these are sort of the values and our aspirational objectives and goals and the things that we want everything that we do to come back somehow to these 5 things. And then from that, we designed the charge to the superintendent, which was, you know, all of the things that are in place here, and you have all of these resources, and we want you to raise each school up by 1 letter grade, right? Because he knows what is required to do that with the academic team in terms of meeting all the state requirements. And so from there, I think together with the superintendent and the cabinet, we need to look at, like, well, in order to get to the place where all students are graduating college and career ready, we need to improve attendance and we need to improve the graduation, right? So those become really the tactics that we use to, or the strategy that we use to achieve these goals. And then it's up to Dr. Sanders and the academic cohort and the teachers to figure out what are the tactics necessary to implement those strategies, right? I think that's sort of how it works down through all the various layers.
Yeah, I was just, yeah, that is generally how it works. So that's what I was wondering, where the strategic plan that they're working on and our core commitments, if they're not married, then we
Yeah.
fail. So I was just wondering are we doing this at the right process?
Right, I see that.
Yeah, that just.
I think we're sort of going simultaneously, side by side, and we might need to tweak
And then we will come
it.
together.
Right.
Once they're both done and, okay.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I was trying
But
to figure
I
out.
definitely want to hear the feedback that you're getting. I think we all want to hear the feedback. So even if tonight we say, okay, we're going to make this one change to the core commitments and move forward with them, I think we would like to hear the feedback that you get and look back and say, okay, do these still make sure, are we still in the right place? Do we need to amend them further? And if not, then what's the next step and what is that process?
To me, the goals have to eventually be measurable.
Well, yeah, these are
Yeah.
commitments.
These
So
are goals and
commitments to me
commitments. This is what
parallel
we're
to
We, the
objectives
board, are
in a
committed to
strategic plan.
these.
Yeah.
And then the school district administrators and the teachers and everyone does the strategy in academics to meet these. Because they're general goals, but we have to specifically graduate students, specifically make sure they're working on or above grade level, and all of this is measurable through the state tests.
Right.
So I do have a similar comment about C. If we are constantly creating a culture, when will it be the culture?
Yep, I agree with that also.
I don't know how to word that. I think one is hard.
I think we're committed to a culture of high expectations.
Is that
Right.
reasonable? Okay.
Just delete creating.
I mean, maintaining, because I feel like a lot of these, well, I think we have the same.
Yeah, B and C.
It's like, they're forward-looking, it's
Yeah.
not necessarily measuring today, it's like being hopeful about tomorrow from a few years back, so maybe we need to just change the tense on some of these.
So
So you're saying
SMCISD is
committed to maintaining a culture?
I would think have we established a culture of high expectations, performance, and professionalism? If we have, then we need to maintain and exceed that. But I would say that the wording of
I think
it being
committed to.
Yeah.
something that we're creating needs to probably be
So
reassessed.
when y'all
I don't-
established these, I'm sorry.
I don't love the language of maintaining, because maintaining seems like
Right.
staying where we are, but
It's status quo.
something that,
So what
Continuing-
about,
Just committing
something
to
that
is
sounds
being
like
active.
so yeah,
Yeah.
committed to a culture of high expectation and performance.
Something that eliminates that
So yeah.
stagnant creating
So
Yeah.
just
and the
taking that out.
stagnation of
Just take
maintaining,
it out
but
and-
something that advances it.
So my question on that would be, on that is, what would you break that down? Then that would need to be broken down into several goals that we can measure to see if we've made that. And was that done in the past? And can we look at that to see if we made it or not? Or were none of these broken down?
We didn't do that as a group. The superintendent did it through his review process. So that was that very long, like 25-page document where he pulled the data points out and pulled them back to each of these commitments. Like he went into, decimal point level data on scores, tying it to this. And that's what that looked like.
Okay.
But I think that where I think you're going is where I think we should go to, which is having that that step in between those two things, right? I think the superintendent needs that for himself, and you all need that in terms of looking at all of the many, many pages of data that you have to look at and figure out what it means. But I think at this level, that we need to have like 2 or 3 actionable items that we know that you're focusing on to make that happen, right?
As part of the strategic plan.
Yeah.
Right, this step of this part of the strategic plan specifically addresses our commitment to a culture of high expectation.
Which
So that
takes me
wasn't
back
done
to the other
before.
question is if we're gonna take feedback from the community, if we set the core commitments now, what are we gonna do with?
I hear you, but I don't think it's really, I get that tension, but I feel like it's not going to be an issue because because we need to listen to the community, but I think we're doing that anyway, just we're doing it in a formal way, but I think we've done that in an informal way, and I think that we've
been voted to represent.
And we're going
the
to integrate
community.
that.
We're representing the
Right.
community in setting these up. And then when you go the next step, you can involve the community for more specifics.
But we also have to integrate what the community says with what TA is demanding of us, right? And the community might not be as well informed and well versed on that, right? In terms of identifying what they think they want most of all, right? That's what I'm saying. So I think that we have to sort of stitch those two things together.
My experience with strategic plans is if it's dictated from up high, you get nowhere. If it's created on the bottom and floats up, then you have a faculty, staff, and a community that is engaged in backing. And I've seen this multiple years with
Yeah.
different strategic plans. You can't dictate from here down. And I know the state does that a lot. But we also see the success rate that they get from their dictate. So that's just, I want to
Right.
make sure that we keep that perspective. We can dictate, but that doesn't mean we're going to succeed with the dictates.
So one of the other things too is that we can address, this isn't forever. That when we get feedback from the community, we can again change, right? We have liberty to change this, our core
Anytime.
commitments whenever we choose.
Right, which we're doing now.
Yeah,
I mean,
so
if
that
we're
is an
doing it now,
opportunity,
we
I
can
think.
Continue to
yeah.
change. It can be a growing document.
Evolving.
Right. I think it's important that we get that feedback. Perhaps not stop this process to wait for it, but when we have it, align it with these commitments. Like,
Okay.
did we address those issues? Do we need to revisit this? And I think that there's value in that once we have feedback.
So can we make those changes that were recommended, and then maybe when would be a good time to?
So we're voting on this at the next meeting, correct? Any changes that we're proposing now, we'd vote on at our September 18th meeting?
Yes, and then we talked at our workshop the other day about, we had the mission statement that we all looked at and sort of thought we needed to take another look at that. And so I think if we have any other changes tonight to recommend with this, then I would like Mr. Fernandez to go ahead and draft that mission statement, at least to take a stab at it, because I think it's better to have Mr. Fernandez, Dr. Sanders, and Dr. Cardona draft that rather than to have us try to wordsmith something like that, right?
Somebody that has a marketing background should.
Right, and hearing,
vision
and having
mission
heard this
statement, please.
conversation and knowing about the work that y'all have been doing with the academic visioning at the Holsworth, like figuring out what does this look like, and then we can, tweak it or edit it or throw it out the window in light of where we want to move with this, and then I think we can start moving that forward into taking the community input and developing the superintendent's response and goals and the actual things, like we need to see, graduation rate increase 1% every year or fivefold next year,
So I would actually prefer that we wait to do the mission statement till we do some of the work on the strategic plan. I think that's where you are, Mr. Shanks. These core commitments to me sound the same as values, and values don't necessarily change drastically over a long period of time, especially when we're around the same thing always when we're talking about a school. But a mission statement is very specific to the time and place. you know, who we are right now is different from who we are 5 years ago. We still have the same values, but the mission for the next 5 to 10 years, which is what you write a mission statement for, may be very different depending on what we hear from the community and the rest of the work that we're doing there.
I'm fine with that.
Puts it in yeah, calling it values puts it in a little more
Okay.
perspective.
So in that sense, then, does it make sense that, do we have other,
I have one more
Yep.
change. D is committed to eliminating achievement gaps within student populations. It seems to me that we're concerned about student gaps among student populations. Within, to me, suggests that it's one student population and there's gaps between them. Among would be between different student populations.
I'm fine with that. I was trying to figure out if there was a way actually to reword that entirely to make it less pejorative, but I do think that it is still significant and needs direct action. So I'm not sure that revising it makes it,
I think it needs
More
direct
meaningful.
action. I just think
Yeah.
within is not the right word there. And so is there a requirement that we involve the community? Is that what I'm understanding from TEA, that we have E because there is a requirement that we have a commitment to involve?
It came in afterwards, yeah.
That we have to have a
That
commitment
we
that
address
involves
the
our
community in our core commitment.
Okay.
so Dr. Cardona is sending a message wondering if we want to change it from eliminating achievement gaps to eliminating opportunity gaps. I don't know where y'all feel like on that.
Which one is that?
I think we still want to work on achievement, right? I mean, I understand what that
It needs to be
does,
achieved.
but I think we still want graduation rate. We don't want to, we're not compromising on the graduation rate, right? Like we still,
And
And
the
that's the
scores
Yeah.
at or above, that's an achievement, and we've
That's the
already put it somewhere else.
quantifiable-
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the quantifiable metric that we can observe is achievement.
I think that actually, and I like the idea of holding off on the visioning statement and the mission statement until we get more pieces in place, and figure out sort of how that evolves, comes up naturally. And I agree with you that, you know, it would be ideal if we could do this from the bottom, or whatever the bottom is, but, you know, that we could do it that way. I think it's hard when we're given the mandates by the state, right? Like that's the challenging part, is trying to stitch it together. But I wonder if we do have opportunities which serve students. I wonder if somewhere in that vision statement, the word opportunity might not play a role, but we're not there yet. So anyway,
Did
Yep.
he explain what he was aiming for
Dr.
with
Sanders?
opportunities? Because if it's what I think he's meaning, you know, we want to make sure we give every kid the opportunity to succeed. You can't make people succeed unless they want to, but if we can give everybody the opportunity, you know, I think that's based on my conversations with him in the past. I think that's why he was looking at that for possible change.
So I can speak to, one of the things that he's spoken about is with Algebra for All, for example, that's something that, although the school district moved to that a couple years ago, now it's almost it's a state requirement in terms of, you know, the providing kids who scored a certain level with the advanced math, right? So what we're trying to ensure is that we don't have any other students who may not have the opportunity to be in advanced coursework, or maybe it's, you know, I'm just thinking about like AP courses, for example, right? What are we doing to ensure that students who may not be identified as needing to be in AP, that they don't fall through the cracks, that we're able to have something in place to identify them, and we close the opportunity gap that may sometimes exist that ultimately leads to the achievement gap. So that's kind of the conversation we've been having around making sure that we are not leaving any students behind with opportunities that they may not be aware of themselves, and that it's up to us to make sure that we provide that exposure and access for them.
So would it be something that we could add to the statement, like committed to eliminating achievement gaps and increasing opportunities, or how could we?
Among all student populations.
Amongst all student
Increase,
populations.
yeah, I like that.
Because
Increasing
I feel like those are two
opportunities.
separate things, but equally important, because like you said, there are a lot of students who don't know what's available to them. depending on their specific plan. So I think that we could maybe add the word opportunities.
I think we could add it, I think we could even just say eliminating achievement and opportunity gaps. Because those are still gaps in opportunity, right, that we want to stop.
And then metrics that could be measured or include
Yeah.
both, the opportunity to have algebra for all, but also the testing among student populations that show increased
Opportunities for AP classes and pre-AP classes.
achievement
That-
and opportunity.
Sound good to everybody? Yes, nodding heads.
I have something else.
Yes.
On that particular, on D, someone mentioned SMISD is committed to eliminating attendance and achievement gaps. So, did anybody, because I have that.
I think we talked about attendance being one of the tactics for eliminating the
One of
gaps.
the goals,
Okay.
to- yeah,
Yeah.
one of the
One of the
goals
ways
that
in which we
tie
do that.
into
Well, when
these.
you're working on that particular thing and adding opportunities too, just make
Yeah.
sure, because.
It
that
ties
was-
back.
But otherwise, I think it's fine.
All right, so if everybody, if we're good with this as we've just discussed, then what I'm going to suggest is that during the regular board meeting, in place of the discussion and possible action to identify the district goals, we'll just have discussion and possible action to identify the core commitments. So we will have the final version there to approve, and then we will wait until we get the information back from the community, and Dr. Sanders and Dr. Cardona and the cabinet have had a chance to sort of begin drafting what that response looks like, and then we'll have another board workshop to try to bring those two things to the same place. Does that make sense? Okay, and I would envision that that will not happen until at least October. But so I'm not gonna, unless, do we want to try to schedule, put something on the schedule
No,
now?
No, I
Okay.
think we need to,
October's good.
the results of.
I would say that it's gonna, so this is just a general comment about how we're handling workshops and regular meetings and trying to be respectful of everybody's time and commitments. If we sort of aimed to be able to have that next conversation at the November agenda prep meeting, would that make sense to everybody? Which would be like, I think, October 30th?
October 30th to review the goals that have been set by administration
Yes.
and align with.
And to
our
try to
goal
align
commitment.
them and start to draft or review a mission statement? Does that make sense? Yes.
It does to me. Yeah,
That's good.
Because I just want to give
yeah, that's.
admin some time to
That's
back
understood.
that,
Yeah.
backtrack that. So, okay. All right. Anything else? Thank you, everybody. And I don't think do we need to vote to adjourn? Sorry,
I move that we adjourn.
thank you.
Second.
All in favor of adjourning this meeting, please raise your hand. Thanks, everybody. I will get better.
Never hurts to move to adjourn.
Yes, sir.
Like, when we go to workshop, are they required to stay here for workshop?
Only the people who are required to be here for workshops, so it depends on, like,